It is Flight Suit Friday time. Sam, how
Kenny,
are you, buddy?
Dude, it's good to see you, man. Where are we right now?
Dude, we are at HI headquarters, and we're about to talk to a really special guest that we got.
Yeah, Washington, D.C. I actually went to headquarters yesterday. Did one day there. I would consider myself staff tour complete.
Yeah.
I just want the
log it.
let the detailers know. Please put that in my file. I have 2 legs of the 3-legged stool at this point for promotion. But yeah, we're back on with Flight Suit Friday. HAI has been a very welcoming guest, and we are going to get a chance to talk to the CEO of HAI. So without further ado, let's get into it, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, let's jump into it. Flight Suit Friday podcast listeners. Sir, how's it going?
Good. How you guys doing? Glad to have you here.
Yeah. Just so if you don't mind giving us a brief introduction of who you are, where we're at, and what your career has been thus far in aviation.
All right. Glad to. Certainly glad to hear you guys got some great backgrounds in the training side of the helicopter world. So that's kind of what I've been.
Mm-hmm.
I started my career aviation-wise with the Army. Back in 1985, went to Fort Rucker, as we call Mother Rucker in the Army.
Nice,
because you just keep coming home to Mother. and I did one of those things. I like to fly a lot as a commissioned guy, but in order to kind of stay there, I volunteered to do a couple of things to keep transitions coming. So started off with the TH-55 back in the day. From the TH-55, I went to the UE. From the UE, I went into the scout track, so I did OH-58s.
Yep.
And then I did the, volunteer to go to Korea so you can get a bunch of flight time. But actually, I didn't get Korea right out of flight school. Instead, I got 2nd 82nd or 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
Did a bunch of flying there because it was kind of like what they called a bubble in flight school when I was there. And our whole flight class was all commissioned officers. So normally you have
warrants,
all warrants,
right?
and you have it sprinkled with some commissioned guys. But we're a bunch of butter bars and silver bars, trying to make our way through. So when my first platoon, we actually had a platoon with a platoon leader that was a senior, first lieutenant, and then we had a bunch of second lieutenants that were basically were flying. So I had the opportunity to get some good PIC time at Bragg. And then when I went back to Mother Rucker, I'd volunteered to go to Korea if they gave me a transition. So they gave me the Cobra transition. So I got to fly Cobras. And I tell you, when people ask me, what's your best aircraft that you've flown, front seat in a Cobra. You just can't beat it because you just hang so far ahead of the center of gravity, and then you have your stick controls. You got the collective on the left side and your cyclics on the right side. And the cyclic, 1960s, it was still pressure sensitive. It's not like the cyclic of today that's between your legs. It's you got to hold that thing and just pressure it. And so then after that, that's when I heard about the 160th, and I wanted to try to get into the 160th Special Ops. I knew you had to get some goggle time. And I knew my company loved me, so I volunteered to stay there to get a command.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, it, I basically wanted to try to keep the guys out of trouble, so we just flew nights all the time.
Yeah.
Come into work at night, and we'll let you go home when the sun comes up. How much trouble can get in during the day?
Yeah.
So after that, coming out of Korea, I went to the 160th. 160th, I picked up the Little Birds.
Yeah.
I was platoon leader during Somalia with the Little Birds.
Uh-huh.
That's the Scout. Is that what they call it?
Well, you got two versions. You got the MH6 and the AH6.
Okay.
So the MH, we've got we put people on the outsides.
Okay.
Isn't
carry
that the Little Bird's the
passengers
one
out
they
there.
have in front of hats, I think, as a demo aircraft up
It's a
there?
Loach essentially,
Yeah.
but highly modified as they've went on from 4 blades to 5 blades to 6 blades.
Yeah.
The engine's been growing. It's a pretty good aircraft. Right now, made by MD.
Yep.
So, and then after that, I went to the Chinook, and so I went from littlest aircraft to the biggest aircraft, and then I settled in with my battalion command was at 2nd of the 82nd, which was 30 Blackhawks. So I kind of cover the spectrum.
Did you fly every single rotary wing that the Army had?
No, I missed the Apache.
Oh, okay.
It came out
yeah.
late, and the LH-72 came out late, so I missed the last 2. But yeah, I think I got everything else in the middle.
Wow.
Wow.
I feel like you must have always been in syllabus. Like, all right, I got to learn a new flight manual here. Time to.
Well, it was really interesting early on because even coming out of Mother Rucker, when talk about standardization and training, the differences in the -10s between the OH-58 and the Cobra. Simple things like Chapter 5. Chapter 5, in the OH-58 was color. chapter 5, when you're talking about memorizing your gauges, and then we had a chapter 5 that wasn't color. And I'm like, well, who's making decisions as I'm trying to study, and I've got to, get out my magic marker to make these gray lines the right color, yellow, red.
Was the 58 the one where they just like send you over the horizon, see if you get shot at, and then you come right back, or is that the different? Am I thinking something different?
No, you're kind of talking about the Vietnam days where they send it over the horizon, so then the Cobra has somewhere knows where it's kind of your smoke on the target.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God. Heard you actually could do a loop in a Cobra, and the thing won't fall apart.
Can you?
I know you got some pretty good diving runs. I've never done a loop in a Cobra.
Okay.
I think
at least not that you want to mention it.
Absolutely not.
Yep, had a Vietnam era pilot regale me with a story of him doing 2 loops in that thing, and I was just like, oh my God, it was amazing.
It's all about having that positive attitude or positive G's.
Positive G's. Don't want to go negative G's.
So obviously you're no longer in the Army, sir. What you do afterwards?
Oh, so after the Army, I was trying to decide, do I go on to that brigade command? I was supposed to get the brigade in Alaska. And I was like, you know what? I think I might just start over. And so I actually started as a aviation safety inspector with the FAA out at the Dulles FSDO.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, the qualifications had been, you got to be current in aircraft, and you had to be a multi-engine fixed wing guy. So as a helicopter pilot, I knew that, one of the things I thought I might want to do was to be a designated pilot examiner when I retired. So I was kind of working towards that. And it takes about, I don't know, if anybody wants to get a job with the FAA, you might as well start working on your application early.
A friend of ours is a DP, and he's in the Coast Guard, and it took him a while to get to it.
Yeah. Well, try to get hired by the FAA. I mean, DP is 2, 3, 4 years process probably trying to get in there because just everything's long. And so I got a call one Friday after I just got back from my Army job. We went over and checked on some troops in Afghanistan, and it had said, "Hey, do you want to do an interview on Friday or Monday with the FAA?" And I was like, "How about Monday?" And then I went home and I looked and said, "Okay, what is an aviation safety inspector?" Oh, it's a designee's boss. Well, if I was going to be a designee, I'm sure I could be the boss.
Yeah,
yeah, right. I mean, so I started out there as an airplane. And in 2008 was when they had a lot of accidents in the air medical community.
Yeah.
And so, believe it or not, the FAA at that time in 2008, I had to be a 1,500-hour multi-engine airplane guy to get a job. Mm-hmm. And then they realized, well, hey, maybe we ought to bring on some rotary wing experts to help us with the medical community. And so that's when they first started doing the helicopters with the FAA. You can come on board with just helicopter experience. So that was a good move on their part.
Yeah, good timing for you too when they need to do that. And so proceeded to work in Dallas, was it Dallas?
Oh, Dulles.
I'm sorry, I thought you said Dallas. Yeah, Dallas.
Yeah,
so
I moved here.
DC.
Yeah, I moved here in DC in 2006 with a job with the Pentagon.
I gotcha.
And I've been here ever since. I kind of like it with the 3 major airports in the area. Lots of flying in the area. Lots of general aviation. I stayed at the Dulles FSDO. I always used to joke that I was going to work at the Dulles FSDO till the metro actually got there. It's almost there now. Yeah. And then come here. But instead, I was out there, I don't know, about 3 or 4 years. And I just kept looking for opportunities at the FAA to make a difference. And ended up working my way down to policy, down into headquarters building. And I had worked at the Pentagon my last 2 years. So I was getting the hang of working at headquarters, policy and strategic stuff. And then my last job with the FAA was I had worked up to, at one point I had a 6-month job as the Deputy Associate Administrator for Aviation Safety. So that was pretty good to see how everything was made and actually was there in that position when we had the accident in the Hudson. There's I've dealt with from the policy level at a senior executive level of the FAA some interesting accidents.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you do a lot of aviation safety when you were in the Army prior to retiring?
Yeah, well, I would think as a commander, you're always dealing with safety. Yeah. And I've never, one thing, my dad would knock on wood, but I would say that one thing that I was proud of is I took every soldier that deployed under my command home from Iraq. And safety wise, we did have one accident where we lost a Black Hawk. I was talking a little earlier with Kenny about OPAT aircraft. So it was during a training mission for that we lost an aircraft, but we didn't lose any soldiers. So I think, at one point when the Army, early on, I was also a Ranger. So I was at the smallest level of training for as far as leadership.
Yeah.
And when you talk about safety, should it be its own standalone paragraph? Do you work it into everything? So I think I was deeply involved with always trying to figure out what is the risk we're dealing with the actual event we're talking about, and being able to identify, I think, the risks. So I say yes, all the time.
Yeah.
Even in personal life.
Yeah.
And that's what the thing we used to try to get our soldiers to do is, don't turn off your safety hat when you go home on Friday night and turn it back on Monday. Please keep it on over the weekends because, the amount of people I'm sure you have lost it in your service as well, on personal stuff is crazy as well.
I'm curious because, sir, you're the first Spec Ops pilot that we've talked to on this podcast. And I know that you're in the aviation safety world now with the civilian side, but as far as going out on missions that you did in your past time in the Army, what was the risk tolerance? Probably in Iraq as well. Like, do you just go and you're like, hey, if this doesn't work out, this doesn't work out, or is there the ability to say no, this mission is not safe enough? I would assume that it is a hey, we are going kind of mentality in that community, but I've never been in that community, so I'm curious.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. Very good question. And the first thing that comes to my mind, I go back to '97 when first of all, in the MH-47s is what I did a lot of time in.
Right.
And so with the MH-47, we transitioned to glass cockpit, and the unit itself had a couple accidents, no fatalities. But there was a problem with the transition to glass, no doubt. And so I had commanded a company in Savannah, and actually General Cody, who ended up being the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, came down at the time, and I actually commanded in B Company 3rd Battalion 160th, and he wanted me to come to A Company 2nd Battalion 160th because they had 2 accidents, and I still had a good record. I still do have a good record.
Yeah.
Like I said, and so I came up and commanded a company a second time inside Spec Ops, which is not the norm.
Right.
And it was dealing with the glass. And so we got into the glass, and the things was about standardization. And it was interesting, the conversation we had, because the other thing we were doing with that glass is we also had a multi-mode radar. So we had the capability to fly far at 100 feet, 300 feet, or 500 feet. Mm-hmm. And so you get the training aspects, the standardization aspects, and on the training side, it was like, hey, here's what you're going to have displayed on the glass, because the glass gives you such great options. And I remember the pilots coming back and said, no, I've got all these options that, you can't tell me that what I'm going to display on my cockpit. I said, you're right. I can't. And if you don't display it my way, then you just don't fly. But it's your option. I want to make sure you feel comfortable with having an option.
Oh, that's good.
But, yeah. So and then, as far as risk, the thing I tried to do as a commander is I got dealt this aircraft. I had the opportunity to move up to the Echo model at the time. Mm-hmm. And with the multi-mode radar in '97, it had the capability, like I said, to go IFR. And it was really interesting because they knew that, they're still trying to figure out the display. And while everything was automated, a lot of automation in the Echo model, they would not allow you to fly coupled while you did the hardest thing possible, which is a multi-mode radar at the lowest altitude. So you had to actually hand fly it. And so a lot of times we couldn't keep up with the queue. Mm-hmm. And so we started, flying with my SIP, Chuck Gann at the time. He was able to figure out how do you figure out you actually looked at the data. So we would pull up the data page and be able to look at the data and determine the power settings to start applying so that we can actually follow it. And then the other thing I tried to do is I tried to implement training in IFR conditions on IR Route 67 down around Nashville. Mm-hmm. And when we tried to do that, I had a hard time convincing my leadership to do this IFR training at low altitude because of the risk. Mm-hmm. And so, but I had to really push actually to do the training because, I felt that we had a $40 million aircraft, the taxpayers paid for. I'm going to get a call from the White House someday saying, go fly, and we're not going to be ready to do it. Mm-hmm. So we pushed, we did the training. The first couple of times down there, you talk to ATC and say, yeah, I want to descend IFR on IR 67. They're like, okay, cancel IFR. I'm like, negative, we want to maintain IFR. So then we got into the procedures where we were doing basically a no radar flights. So you had to do the position reporting, next report.
You're below the minimum vector and altitude and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So we, and it was made for jets, the IR routes.
Right.
So we start flying them on helicopters, IFR, and we start closing down big blocks of airspace for like an hour.
Oh, they must have been really happy with you.
But we worked it out. So, there is I felt, so I always push, but I always wanted to be the person that, and I said no to my guys a couple times. Yeah. Because they were, we got to do this, we could do this. but yet, there's some times that being able to fly in those other aircraft, having the background of knowing, can we do this and should we do this are two different things. A lot of times, can we do this? Probably, but there's some risk in there. And, I got a specific example where, on a joint staff where I would, like Chinooks, when you get up to 7,000 feet or, that's the highest I would like to be at because we did aerial refueling.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get up at aerial refueling, as the air gets thinner, you're going more forward with the cyclic. You go with the cyclic, the front blade's coming down. You got 4 feet 6 inches clearance as I'm moving to that movement to contact over the drone, right?
Yeah.
So as I move forward to that drone,
that's not a lot.
Yeah. So the higher you go, the harder it is to get gas. And so I was always the guy, not the guy. I was joint staff. I get to look at the plans and decide whether they were going to do it or not. Right after I had left, I got replaced on the joint staff by an Apache guy, and he allowed a mission at a higher altitude. They extended the routes because they weren't getting the gas. I'm like, of course they extend it because if everything was perfect, they'd be able to get gas at $10,000. But then it caused an incident because they couldn't get gas. Everything got drug on. It affected the mission, and it's like,
yeah. Did they have to?
Somebody's got to say no.
Yeah, somebody's got to say no at some point.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you bring up, risk from a mission perspective and then also a training perspective. Like, how much risk is warranted for a training mission? And kind of like you alluded to, of like, well, at some point, like, we may be asked to do this mission, and if we've never trained it, well, then we're not going to be good. We're not going to be proficient at it. And it's something that we deal with in the Coast Guard quite a bit of talking about. You and I were talking a little bit before we started of. We do a lot of training, and like, okay, we're at a unit. Our weathermen's are 502 is a typical Coast Guard weathermen's for training. And if I have like a fully qualified aircraft commander next to me or an instructor pilot, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I need to fly in 502 today to just go do whatever. But if you have a co-pilot who's on their progression to make aircraft commander, sometimes it's worthwhile to be like, hey, have you ever seen what it looks like at 502? No? Like,
let's go do it.
Guess what we're doing today? Like, we're going to go fly. And you just got to it's calculated risk to make sure that you are prepared to do the mission that you're asked to do. And it sounds like you guys were able to handle that and do that really well.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing is deciding, okay, you've got your minimums, but is it a training event? Or, the thing that cracked me up in the Army quite often was that, when you had VIP transport and they wanted you to fly in the worst weather because I had to get there, right? And so the only reason we're going to fly today is because I got to fly this 2-star general.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a second. So, now I got to look at the PIC who's flying. And a lot of times what I would do, because my background, of course, with the 160th and stuff was that, okay, and I did fixed wing stuff. So as far as flying IFR, a lot of helicopter guys I always found, every time I took over a unit, not a lot of people were flying in the clouds. They weren't actually going out in IMC conditions. And so I always pushed that training, any opportunity we could, because the bottom line in the Army is, we're not going to assault a fogged in hill. So so normally the target's going to be fine. The infantry guys are going to be waiting on us. And if we got IMC en route and we don't go, if we want to try to, scud run versus going up and in it and then come back out. I mean, that's the stuff that we got to maximize.
Yeah.
So it always cracked me up. And so as a commander, I would a lot of times talk to my boss and he'd be like, what do you mean I got to sign this risk assessment? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be the PIC on this mission. He goes, why are you flying it? I said, because I don't think we ought to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Culture-wise, I mean, you mentioned that a little bit about, kind of the training culture and the safety culture in the Army. Was there a significant shift when you moved into the FAA role or your role now at HAI? Because we, as military or prior military pilots, are very mission-oriented, right? We're going to get the mission done, where the mission mentality is different in the civilian community, right? We are a transport service, for example, for EMS, get to A to B, but it's more important to keep the air crew. If we don't have the weather minimums, we just don't go. So was that a hard transition for you to shift mentality there, or was it pretty seamless for you? How did that go?
No, that's a good question, because it was not sure if it's a mentality, what the word was, but the thing that I found out with the government or with the FAA was that as a commander, you're able to identify the risk and figure out what the hazards are and then mitigate those hazards. When I started doing work for the FAA, I started as GS-12, just out there doing check rides and stuff. And I would call and I'd say, hey, here's a problem. This guy didn't meet the regulation. He didn't do this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to give him training on this, this, and this, and then be able to give him the check ride. And they're like, no. So there was never an ability to actually identify the risk and then actually mitigate it and help. It was always a yes or no, black or white.
You're purely evaluation.
Yeah.
Either you met it or you
Right.
didn't. Whereas we're used to like, okay, well, you didn't get it. Let's
Right.
Let's,
I mean,
we're going to get you there by the end of the day, or maybe next week. So
That would be hard for me. Very
It
hard.
was
for me.
hard.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. Is it different here at HAI? And what's your role in the safety culture here at HAI?
Well, certainly, hopefully, a lead from the top down. Chris Hill's been doing a great job for it. It's always about, what are the risks. You got, first step, which I don't know if it's been new in the last 20 years. I mean, I've been around a little while, but, just identifying the risk. And one of the things that when I was at the FAA was, again, I moved up and I had to actually, in order to move into supervisory positions, my first supervisor job was I took over Colgan Airlines as the frontline manager after the Colgan Air crash up in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was dealing with
which one was?
Yeah, I don't remember that
the
one.
rudder one.
Well, what happened was he had set the autopilot on a slow descent for the approach, and when it got down to the approach, it's kept holding the altitude, and it slowed back and it stalled.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm familiar with that
Q400,
one. Okay.
I think was the aircraft. Yeah,
Nice.
and so killed 50 people, killed some people on the ground as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so I was dealing with the VPs of that company, and it's like asking them to do a good risk analysis if they wanted to go to a new location. I was just shocked at the lack of ability to identify all the risk and hazards,
Yeah.
and then mitigate them.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't know what's out there, that's the first step, right? Like,
Right.
hey, what's different about today? What could kill us today
Yeah.
that we're not paying attention to?
Yeah. So I still flight instruct a little bit on airplanes and helicopters. Try to fly with owners mostly, and even transition to older gentlemen in a Mooney. That simple question. And it was new to him, being in his late 70s. And I said, hey, just for today, everything we're going to do, tell me what are the risks. What do you mean? Well, there's got to be some risk. I mean, give me the top 3 risks that may cause a problem in today's flight.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah.
I think that falls into like CRM that the airlines train to, the whole threat error management kind of continuum. What's the specific threat or error that's going to trap us today, and then how are you going to manage that? And having that conversation going continually is really important to keep the aircraft, whatever you're flying, safe specifically. So.
Yeah. How did you get your fixed wing time? Because Army doesn't do a whole lot, right?
No, I didn't do Army fixed wing at all. As soon as I got to Fort Bragg, right out of flight school, I went right down to Fayetteville Airport and start flying down there.
Dang.
Them big, it's got to be bigger than a 130, right? Because it's called a Cessna 150.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Way bigger. Are you, how many hours do you have total, sir?
About 7,000.
Yeah. And Chris was telling us you fly in the Robinson.
Yeah.
How's that?
It's good. I mean, it's, I was doing a lot of stuff to get my CFIs. And as I went through, since I, right out of flight school, as you just asked, I went to fixed wing. So when I was doing the working towards my CFI, I always kept doing back and forth. All right, what do I most qualified and comfortable in for this check ride? Okay, what? And so as I did all the add-ons, I went back and forth. And when I got my CFI rating, I actually got my CFI rating in the R22. That was my first CFI rating. And it was funny, out at St. Louis is where I went. So I'm currently flying Chinooks for the 160th. And on the weekends, I'd drive out to St. Louis and I'd fly R22s and do auto rotations, in an R22 while I'm flying Chinooks during the day.
It couldn't be any more different. I had I was flying an aircraft cross country for the Coast Guard a couple months ago, and we landed at Alexandria, Louisiana. Not here. And we're a power limited aircraft, very cognizant of where the wind is. Like a lot of people joke about the 65 is it's like a multi-million-dollar wind meter. At least our 60 counterparts do that because like, oh, okay, where's the wind coming from? Hey, the 65's down there hovering. That's the way we need to point because they don't care. And I felt the same way with the Chinook because there was a Chinook there taken off and they took off with a 30 knot tailwind. It's just like, nah, we don't care. Just going to lift up and blast into oblivion.
Yeah, doing the Star Wars, just backing up into a tailwind and just a pedal turn into the wind.
Yeah, like, okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, man. So is there any hesitancy or when flying in a single engine helicopter? I mean, I'm only a dual engine guy. You know, I'd look at a Robinson. I think, oh, that thing's ran by like a helicopter or the lawnmower motors in that thing kind of mentality. It's so small, but is it difficult to fly? Is it different? Do you like flying it?
Well, the single engine, my single engine story was I went from Little Birds right to Chinooks.
Mm-hmm.
So when I found out I was going to start flying the Chinooks, I bought myself a Ford F-150 with a king cab so I can start getting used to some more stuff behind me. Mm-hmm. And then I've got to get used to crew chiefs too.
Yeah, yeah.
So now I got crew chiefs that are doing a great job back there, and then you get into the verbiology, making sure everybody's using the same terminology. Yep. And you talk about some of the stuff on single engine versus dual engine, and when I had my first I was flying. We were flying IFR in a Chinook from Campbell down to Savannah, and we had a chip light come on in the engine. Mm-hmm. So we pulled the chip. I talked to the guy next to me. He goes, "Well, what are you gonna do?" I said, "Well, what's the emergency procedure say?" We're gonna pull the engine off. We're gonna pull the engine offline. And so we pulled the engine offline because in the Chinook, although I can go up to 54,000 pounds, I can fly single engine up to 40,000 pounds. Mm-hmm. So it was no big deal. We were like somewhere around 35. We didn't have an altitude issue, nothing. We land. I call the maintenance guy, and he goes, "Well, what'd you do?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What did I do? I do what the emergency procedure says." He goes, "Okay," because Chinook guys, they normally don't want to pull that engine offline. I'm like, "Okay, well, I was the Little Bird guy. I only had one engine, so I had no problem flying with one engine."
That's interesting.
So it was like one of those. As I went through the different aircraft that I've been flying, the mentality that goes with the airframe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always find it interesting because, there's other government agencies, whether it's local or federal, that are flying single-engine helicopter with no floats, and they don't think twice. Like, they just go in and they effect the rescue or they go do something, whereas, like, we'll sit there and talk about, like, well, what happens if we lose an engine? Like, well, we have fly-out. When will we turn out? And they're just like, oh, yeah, if we lose an engine, we'll be somewhere right down there.
And get out of the helicopter, do their egress procedure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Now, I learned a lot with the off, of course, being over water a lot more as you guys are when I start doing some Navy ops. When you start loading that Chinook down and we start doing single engine capable and what the Navy wants to, a Navy, it's interesting. We can do stuff with a single engine helicopter and they don't have a problem. But the minute you start doing stuff with a multi-engine helicopter, now you have you want to follow the Navy rules that require you can't go to the full load if you got two engines.
Yeah.
And we had to operate at single engine capability with the load. That was new to me as an Army guy.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit, sir, being the head of HAI here, is there anything that keeps you up at night? Is there any big issue that you guys are trying to tackle that you see in the industry?
Well, the number one thing people talk about is insurance rates lately have gone
really?
through the roof.
Yeah.
So we're trying to help with that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Workforce development is another biggie. So that's going to hurt everybody.
Just not having the people, or what do you mean by that?
I mean, the training on both the maintenance sides as well as pilots. I mean, there was a big pilot shortage was hitting the news right before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the pandemic, certainly got everybody distracted for 2 years, but that's going to come back really strong. And we haven't done a whole lot over the last 2 years to try to close the gap on a workforce.
Yeah.
So we anticipate that being an issue.
What are you guys doing for that now? Like, what do you see the future of HAI in that specific world?
Well, number one thing we're doing is we're starting a work group to make sure we get the people that are actually affected by it and the people that see the hurdles out there to bring them together to see what we can do with education, universities. Even with our Heli Expo now, we're going to try to get younger kids involved, bring them out to watch aircraft land at the next show in Atlanta. So anything,
Hook them.
Yeah, anything.
Hook them when you can.
We'd like to do is, I know from my FAA days, where the FAA frowned on or certain inspectors, certain things. I still think, a helicopter coming in, delivering a football to the 50-yard line at a big game is very good, and you could be done safe. I mean, it's,
I have a funny story about that.
Yeah?
I feel like I want to share
Did you
it.
do it?
No, I never got to land and deliver the football, but we were supposed to do a flyover for a 49ers game after they had built their new stadium in the South Bay there up in San Francisco. And so we were doing it in conjunction in a formation flight with one of our fixed wing assets that's out of Sacramento. It's a C-27, mini C-130, essentially, same thing, except just 2 engines. And so we're sitting in a holding pattern. We have everything dialed in exactly when we need to leave to get right over the national anthem at the perfect time. And it was at San Jose approach, like, okay, it's time to go. Here we go. And San Jose approach, like, hey, we got a Southwest aircraft coming in for landing. You need to do another 2 turns and holding. And I'm just watching the time to go, like, tick up, and the airspeed that the aircraft has to make to get on scene on time is going from like 120 ground speed up to like 300. So obviously our helicopter can't get there. And, and instead of telling the fixed wing to go, the PIC decides to, no, we'll all just go together. And we did this flyover right in the middle of the coin toss. Like,
Oh, jeez.
I was looking down at the Jumbotron, and like all the captains on whoever the 49ers are playing are looking up like, who the heck are these guys flying over? The worst thing is they had us to the game afterwards. I was ashamed to show up in my flight suit.
As you should be.
As I should be. Terrible flyover.
Who was your PIC for that?
Wow.
Dusty Williams.
Yeah.
Commander Dusty Williams, current operations officer of New Orleans, soon to be XO.
That's right.
Great flyover. Yeah. Totally off a tangent story there.
That may be the worst flyover I've heard.
It was a terrible flyover, sir. It was. I'm ashamed of our performance. Actually,
I don't know that you are ashamed because you're pretty eager to share that
Dude,
story.
I love telling that story. I don't think they called us back for a flyover for a while down there.
I think a no-show would have been better.
I think a no-show would have been better. Well, we should have had the C-27, the fixed wing, just go do it. Although a fixed wing flyover is.
Now, a really good story at the after party would have been much better.
Yes. Yeah, that's what happened. Oh, my God. Well, I just kind of went off on a complete tangent there.
So what is driving the insurance rates up? Is it a lack of people? Is it a lack of training? Or is it just inflation? Everything's going up?
I think it's the Boeing issues.
Really?
They're all tied together. I think a lot of the insurance companies, there's only so many out there. And I think when you have such a big basically payout is what has happened over the last couple of years that it's affecting everyone.
Yeah, I've never even thought about insurance from a military standpoint. It's like, Coast Guard foots the bill if something goes wrong kind of mentality. But
what's been your most memorable aviation highlight, would you say?
Wow. So my military highlight was been participating in the 50th anniversary of World War II, and I actually got to jump onto San DZ for real.
Oh,
that
wow.
was that was good. Aviation wise, I mean, I'd have to go back to bringing everybody home from Iraq, man. That was big.
That's huge, man. That must have been a fun experience doing the 50th anniversary.
Jump master in the door, putting people out, and then falling out and giving the briefing that day of, this is San DZ, and it's not San DZ Fort Campbell. This is San DZ Holland.
Yeah.
Wow. That was good.
What altitude you guys jump out at?
We normally jump at 1,000. Yeah, just hop and pop mostly.
Hop and pop.
Hop and pop, baby.
Yeah, we don't do that.
Yeah, well, we don't have an opportunity to pop. It's popping. It's just the length of the static line.
Yeah, whenever it goes, you're done there.
I know the Canadian guys are doing some, but they're doing higher stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, we've worked with the Royal Canadian Air Force and doing joint training with them, and they call them SARTECs, but they're basically the Coast Guard's equivalent of a rescue swimmer. They do jumps in addition to deploying out of the helicopter from the hoist cable or out the back. They will do high altitude, 5,000 feet or so, jump out the back and deploy in. They're PJs essentially for the Canadians, but I wanted to jump back into safety culture. Yeah, if you want to. How do you drive a good safety culture in civilian aviation? And let me tailor that to a better question. How is the safety culture right now in the civilian world? And is there room for improvement? Have you had any recent mishaps that have been eye-opening? I know I can think of one in particular, but anything that you see that you need to go in a direction in terms of safety culture?
I think that as you mentioned, we talked about the training side of it. That just because the FAA, you meet the FAA minimum standards, and this came up last week with some industry folks that said that the FAA needed to change their standard on biannual flight reviews. That it wasn't enough to do it every 2 years. Mm-hmm. The fact that doesn't mean that you only do it every 2 years. I mean, you should be able to fly and mentor people. My answer to it, I thought from industry, was that anybody that's not out there flying regularly should get somebody to come sit with them. It'd be great if you get a new CFI to help him build time. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to do a lot, or they or she, because you want to make sure that we're well-rounded. But get up there and fly with somebody versus just going out there and doing solo flight all the time and only taking that ride. So mentoring and going out there, as we talked about with, hey, what are the top 3 things today that are the most risky? Even though it may not be risky. It may be the weather, it may be the length of the runway, maybe that you didn't get enough sleep the night before, but just thinking through all the different things and getting to have that mental checklist. I think there's definitely room for improvement. It certainly is the one of the things in HAI is, we really are an operator-based association, and the individual owner or the individual operator that rents a helicopter, 16% of the accidents are coming out of there in the United States. And so we're trying to do more of an outreach with the U.S. Helicopter Safety Team on, how can HAI help? Well, HAI can help by being a member of HAI. It's $95. It's not even it's not even an hour of gas on a helicopter.
Yeah.
But the amount of information and the available training that we have online will certainly help reduce that. And my 2 things as HAI is, number 1, you got to be safe, and number 2, we got to help you be prosperous. And both of those go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so many times that headline of that accident that's that doesn't need to happen. We want to get rid of that. There is nobody. I've been on board since I think 2016 when Matt Zaccaro and I, as part of the U.S. Helicopter Safety Team, came on with 0 fatalities. And then what I had to do, even from the FAA perspective, I'd stand in front of an audience that want to argue over me that you can't get there. The civilian airlines got there. Oh yeah, and that's when it's like I couldn't believe it. I don't think we get it anymore. I think over the years people have stopped arguing.
Yeah,
where it actually is
changed the culture.
Well, who is it? Yeah, who is it you want to get rid of? Which one of your relatives don't you want to come home tonight for dinner? So I think people got it that it is a possibility. I know in the helicopter world it just seems we're struggling, and it gets down to a lot of it's that human. And very few on the maintenance side, but we have had some maintenance issues as well. But there are no new accidents, and we're just trying to figure out how do we help stop that person, especially the individual operator / owner that doesn't have someone to say, no, you can't fly. As I was talking earlier, somebody to say no. And so, it's something, I tried to do in the FAA, and maybe we can do it here with HAI, where if you got a question in your mind about flying and you need to talk to somebody, call us and tell us what's going on, or your risk assessment. We got a risk assessment that you can run through, and we can help you say, I always say I'd much prefer to be on the ground looking up going, damn, I should have flown, versus in the air going, how am I going to get out of this?
And we say that a lot. Yeah. Better to make that decision and be like, oh, it's clear day. Crap, I shouldn't have canceled, but you're safely on deck.
Yep. And you can go tomorrow if you need to, right?
Yeah. How do you guys manage training opportunities in the helicopter community, specifically the industry where time is money? You're flying, people from point A to point B, or you're going out and picking up somebody EMS. Like, how do you have time to add? Like, I'm going to do an extra approach on this sortie, or I'm going to do this bit of hover work at the end of it, or a couple of autos. Is that built into civilian flying, or is that something that needs to be increased?
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good point. I don't know of a lot of owners that actually go out and do that. I know the funny story I have, the one time was I was out there with him and I was trying to do auto rotations, and we're doing hovering autos.
Yeah.
And I did a hovering auto every quarter, every 90 degrees. And I said, okay, you have the controls. And he hovered over to parking. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? He goes, I didn't want to do those. He's the owner, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what do I decide now? Do I decide to, continue flying with this guy, just continue trying to help, or do you give up on him?
Yeah.
Yeah, something that we talk about a lot in our culture of just being the best person that you can be. And maybe that means like doing a little bit of extra stuff and doing those cut guns as we call them, to make yourself better, because one day it might actually save your life, So I think we're getting the side eye here. I think we're running out of time. Jim, thank you so much for your time sitting down to talk to us today. We normally like to end every session with some sort of aviation advice that you would like to give any pilot listening out there, or a younger version of yourself that would have helped you along your career. So, what do you got?
Well, I think the one thing probably we didn't mention is the ability now for data recording and being able to actually have something in the aircraft that you can compete against yourself on every flight. What is it you wanted to do today? And then when you get done flying, you can download it and you can play it back on your computer and say, okay, how did I do today against me? And who else knows? Just me. And so if you, as you were just saying, Kenny, if you try to be the best you could all the time and be trained to that, I think you'll help us reduce that accident rate. So that's what I would recommend. Get a data recorder in there, compete against yourself and be the best you can.
Yeah. And sharpen those around you. Like, hey, if you find some area where you're like, man, I couldn't do a cut gun very well today, or man, I tried to do that ILS with the foggles on and I couldn't do it, and share that with another pilot to be like, I wonder if I could go out and do that tomorrow if I needed to. So
yeah, pulling the camera, the footage, like for us specifically in the Coast Guard, like pulling that hoist cam footage of that hoist that you just did, even if it's out in training, and then sitting down as a crew and watching that afterwards, the training value is incredible. There's no other competing demands. You don't have other stimuli that you're distracted with, and you can say like, hey, like I screwed up there. I didn't say that right there. I could have done this better. Or, hey, this went really well. That's a really good point. Like, let's make sure we continue to use that technique in a future hoist or whatever that might be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, sir, don't want to keep you from your other meetings. Really appreciate you having us here at HAI. Thank you for welcoming us here and for your insight.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a joy to have you guys here, and look forward to the next time we get to interact.
Awesome.
Our pleasure.
All right. We'll end there.
Gotta take every chance to